Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is TheSketchMonkey here. Today we're having a look at this beast. This is the Lexus LX600, the top spec called the Ultra Luxury, and how I would describe this is probably feels like a ultra luxury tank, specifically with this absolutely stunning interior that we have here, and specifically in the back seat. So what we're gonna do in this video is have a look at this design, because I think this front end, I wouldn't call this a beautiful design, but the front end has one of the biggest grills I've ever seen on a production car. We're gonna look at the front, the design here, the side, the rear, the interior, and then of course you're gonna take this for a drive. Let's start with a quick walk around of this LX600 Ultra Luxury. First of all, what strikes you when you first look at this is going to be the grille, and I now have it in the off-road setting, the highest ride height that we can have, and you can see the wheels looking very luxurious as well. These proportions look funky to me. I think the wheelbase overall is a little too short, but it is great for off-roading, of course. Coming around to the back end, we do have a Lexus light bar in the middle. I do think it suits Lexus to have these type of graphics, specifically in the rear end. Lexus has been using light bars for a very long time. But with that said, before we jump into details of the exterior, let's first of all have a look at this beautiful interior. I love the setup here. I can't wait to get into that in a minute. Let's check what's hiding underneath the hood of this beast. So we don't have a V8 anymore, but that's totally fine because we do have more power and better fuel economy. So under the hood here we do have a twin turbo 3.5 liter V6, putting out 409 horsepower, 479 pound-feet of torque, connected to a 10-speed automatic transmission. You have, of course, four-wheel drive. 0 to 60 is done in about 6.5 seconds, but some have tested this down to 5.8 seconds for this almost 6,000-pound heavy SUV. Top speed comes in at 130 miles per hour. So the fuel economy sits at about 17 city, 22 highway. And the pricing for this is over $130,000. And we're gonna check out exactly what you get for your money. So let's close this back down and have a look at how thick this hood is. So let's close this hood back up and let's go in and talk about this design. So overall, I don't think it's a necessarily beautiful design, this Lexus LX. It does look very utilitarian, but with the classic luxurious touch that Lexus adds to their cars. I do love the integration of the headlights here, because we don't have bumper headlights sitting down here. Instead, we have traditional looking headlights sitting up here, 3 full LEDs. You have the LED indicator down here as well. Beautifully done. It's not over stylized, and that's not what you want on the bigger sibling, or the biggest sibling in the lineup of Lexus SUVs. As I've said before, the bigger the vehicle, the less styling you want in the vehicle. They want to make him look a little bit more stately, and I do think Lexus did a great job doing that here. But me personally, which spec I would choose here, I would probably go with the F Sport, because that blacks out this entire grille. Now it's all silver. We have a massive Lexus logo in the front end, and just have a look at all these ribs that we have going on here. For some reason though, I still think Lexus managed to make it work. It looks pretty good having this big grille in the front end, even though, as I said, I would like to have it be in black to kind of have the same style as we have down here. We have fog lights here, parking sensors integrated as well. Overall, it definitely looks like a Lexus with the L-shaped headlights and the big grille. And we also have this huge dip in the hood up top, which you can clearly see from the driver's seat. And it feels weird. When I was driving this, I was always wondering, how did they integrate this big dip with this grille in the front, and how does it connect? But as you can see, it stops right here before it has any sort of connection to what's going on in the grille. Now, looking at the side view, we do have, as I said, this is in the highest ride height setting. Right here we do have 22-inch wheels. I actually like the wheel design that we have here, because it looks utilitarian, but it still looks very classy and elegant. These spoke designs, I think it suits the ultra luxury to have this. However, a couple of things. If you're paying $130,000 plus for your large ultra luxury Lexus SUV, I would want to have these be retractable. These side steps are static onto the bodywork. I guess it's going to be, it's one less thing that can break on the car, so I guess that's a good thing to have them be static like this, but it would look a lot better if they're just folded up into the bodywork. The overall, as I said, the proportions look a little weird because we have a wheelbase that is really short in relation to the rest of the body lines of the car. And I'm not a huge fan of this treatment in the back either. This reminds me of the Infinitis and the Nissan Armadas, which look a little dated. Just this simple styling that we have of the D-pillar in this case. Up top you do have some roof rails. And personally, I'm a fan of this green color. It has an elegant feel to it in combination with the light brown interior. You have some splashes of chrome here, this being the Ultra Luxury. You have an indicator here as well, even though I would like the indicator to be the entire bar here, so it wraps around into this area as well. Now when you look at the side view, I would personally go for the new Lexus GX because I think that actually has a beautiful design. This, as I said, does not look as beautiful as GX, and I do feel like the wheelbase and the overall proportions, the volumes here are a little bigger than the GX, but overall the GX is just such a better looking vehicle than this, in my humble opinion. Moving on to the rear end here, we do have, as we talked about in the walk around, we do have the light bar in the middle. We also have full LED indicators, looking nice. I wouldn't expect anything else on a $130,000 SUV. Very thick, juicy LED in the corner here, goes into a little bit of a thinner piece, but overall very static horizontal look for this design, just like we want in the big LX. Further down, we do have some silver pieces down here for the diffuser, also some reverse light integrated right here at the bottom. So let's open this up and let's see what we have hiding in the trunk space. We do have the separator up top, but that's pretty much it. There is nothing crazy going on back here. You have an outlet for the vacuum cleaners, and under here I would expect to find some more storage, but that's not what we get in the Lexus LX. My favorite design feature of the LX is definitely going to be this interior. I think it's just beautifully done with the screens and the gauge cluster, even though the gauge cluster is not entirely digital, and some people don't like that in a $130,000 car, but I definitely prefer to have it like it is, and we're going to look at that in a minute. First of all, let's have a look at this door. Beautifully done here as well with this orange leather. We have some different types of material here, the memory settings for your seat, and you have the normal window and mirror controls here with some storage at the bottom. Lexus right here, looking nice, and this massive side step as well integrated onto the body. So let's jump in here and let's go in and check out what this interior is all about. So as I said, this gauge cluster right here, you have a 7-inch screen, so not a 12.3 like we're used to seeing in a lot of modern cars today. Instead, we get 7-inch here and 12.3 for the big screen up here, which is the infotainment screen. And then some people in the Middle East, they asked Lexus because they wanted some sort of screen here. They call it a helper screen, and this is a 7-inch. And Lexus said, sure, we can put something like that in instead of having just buttons here. But I'm glad what they did here. What I'm glad they did, we have 3 screens, but we still have a bunch of physical buttons down here, which I love. For example, for the climate control settings here up and down, and you also have the fan speed and the drive modes. This is the normal drive mode, and this is auto, and here we have rock crawl setting. And I love the way these buttons feel. They just feel sturdy and heavy, and I love that you can see the in the animation here as the car moves up and down in which setting it is. Beautifully done. We also have this little gauge up here. The harder you press the brake and also the accelerator, you're gonna see that it adds some graphics here to show you how hard you're pressing the pedals. I'm not entirely sure why, but it is a pretty cool feature. You also have a G meter up here and a bunch of different other stuff that's not really necessary to have in the car, but it adds to the, I guess, the experience for the interior itself. And you can also change the climate control settings here if you want to do that. If you don't want to touch these buttons, you can also do that in the software. But moving on to the gauge cluster here, so we have the middle gauge changes as you change your drive modes. We have Eco, we have Comfort, Normal, Sport S, and Sport S Plus. I'm not entirely sure what the reason is to have a Sport S and then a Sport S Plus in a Lexus LX. We also have a custom one here which you can customize and do whatever you want with. But the temp gauge and the fuel gauge here on the sides, those are all analog, and I think that's totally fine. I've said this before, but I do think having some analog buttons and some analog features in the gauge cluster adds to the overall luxurious feel of this car. And up top we do have this 12.3-inch gauge infotainment screen, which doesn't look very well into it. Feels like it's an afterthought that they just splashed onto on top of this piece, and the integration is not the best, but you have a massive stop-start button here for the car itself, and you have the regular features that you find in a lot of Toyota and Lexus products. Inside of the infotainment screen you have the navigation here as well. Pretty responsive, a little bit laggy, but that's totally fine because I would always use Apple CarPlay anyway. Further down, as you talked about, the helper screen here, a nice little addition to this interior. We have the drive selector here, so if you want to change the drive modes, you just do that by rotating this dial, and it has a nice solid click to it. It feels nice to use. You have the 4 low and 4 high settings on the other side. Heated and cooled seats in 3 different levels for both the passenger and the driver and the back seats. In between the heated seat buttons and cooled ventilated seats, you do have this wireless charging pad. This feels like a very old school gear selector. Nothing wrong with that. Putting it into reverse, it's going to pop up, of course, the reverse camera, and you do have 360 view. You also have this X-ray view. As you can see right here, it sort of renders as we go along. Pretty cool to have if you're going off-road. You also have the camera button on the left side of the steering wheel. Up here, we do have a view. If we click this, you're going to see all these different camera views for your car, which I think looks pretty cool to see. Full 360, perfect if you're going off-road again. Further back, we do have an array of buttons here. We have a locking center differential. Body on frame, it feels very solid to drive this. It feels old school to drive this car, even though it's a brand new Lexus. Here you have the buttons for raising and lowering the suspension, and it happens pretty fast. I'm going to keep it in the lowest setting for now. We also have some sort of pad right here. This is not a wireless charging pad. We have 2 cup holders, and this is what the key looks like. A pretty normal looking Lexus key. I do wish they did something special with this, since you're paying so much money for this car, to have some sort of special key for this. Now this is pretty cool. You can open this first of all from this side, or if the passenger want to open it, you can open it from this side as well. Beautiful stitching on the leather itself, and this is actually a cooler, so you have a freeze box in here to keep your snacks cool. Now these seats are some of the most comfortable seats I've ever sat in, and I love this color of this interior. My wife does not like this interior color at all, but I think it looks great. However, one thing I would expect to have as a feature in this $130,000 SUV is massaging front seats, but we don't get that here. They do have it in the back seats though, which is pretty strange. They could have just taken that same feature and applied it to the front seats, but that's not happening in this case. I would also like to have a larger sunroof than what we have right here. This is a pretty standard size sunroof. It's not something I personally care about that much, but I do know that a lot of people want to have a full sunroof in a car like this. Moving on to the steering wheel, it looks like a pretty standard Lexus steering wheel, except for these inserts of, I'm not sure what this is, if this is wood or whatever this is, but it looks nice. Heated, of course. You have the paddles for the gearbox on the sides. You also have the buttons here for the gauge cluster, so we can have a bunch of different information in the gauge cluster and some settings that we can fiddle around with. The volume buttons are also on the left side. On the right side, you have the controls for the cruise control settings. Overall, a pretty decent looking steering wheel. With that said, let's jump into the back seat, and I'm pretty sure I will not have any problems fitting behind my own driving position, but that's not what we're going to do today, because we're going to jump over to the passenger side. Now this one comes with the captain's chairs, and it looks so comfortable back here. So let's jump in here and check out what we get for our money when it comes to the LX and the back seats. So we do have our own dedicated little screen back here. This is also a 7-inch. Play around, for example, with the front seats. You can adjust them by using these buttons here. But the coolest feature for the back seat is, if you see this automatic button down at the right corner, if we click this, you see that the front seat is going to go all the way back, and my seat is now reclining, and it's going to give you this proper lounge feel. We can also create a little footrest for ourselves by using that button right there, and it folds down this piece of the front seat. And overall, just chilling back here, it's super relaxing, although it doesn't necessarily feel like it was purpose built to have a back seat like this, because the space is still, it still feels a little cramped, but overall, I mean, I could sit back here forever, for it doesn't matter how long of a road trip I'm on. In addition to this, we have a bunch of storage in the middle here with a couple of USB ports. We also have more storage and cup holders here with a phone charger in the middle. We can open this up. We have the headphones for the screens that is on each seat in front of us, with some additional USB ports back here and a cigarette outlet. Alright guys, let's take the Lexus LX600, and listen to this, by the way. Sounds like you're closing a vault. So let's take this beast for a drive and let's see what this is all about. As I said, it feels pretty old school to drive this. You can definitely feel this body on frame construction, but it's so comfortable. I mean, would you expect anything less for $130,000 in a Lexus SUV? I mean, going over this parking lot here, very, very smooth, even though it's not a smooth surface at all. So under the hood, we do have this 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 putting out 409 horsepower, which is more than the V8, and it's also quicker, more fuel efficient. So it's all good for me. I don't need the V8 in this. It still sounds really good. It doesn't really sound like a V8, but it still sounds very good. V6s usually sounds great. Out on this main road, and we are in, let's put it into Sport S Plus. So not just the Sport S, the Sport S Plus. Let's come to a stop here and let's floor it. There we go. It takes a while for it to kick in. It's pretty fast, but the thing is, when you have a big, large tank like this, you don't feel the speed whatsoever. And also the fact that this is so comfortable, it doesn't feel like you're going fast. You can easily cruise 100 miles per hour in this all day long, and it will feel like you're going 50. So yeah, this is not a car that I would personally use the shifters for a lot, because I mean, it's a 6,000 pound SUV. When are you gonna use the shifters? It doesn't really add to the driving experience. But, you know, it's still got the power, that's for sure. What I'm confused about, though, is Lexus now with the new TX, and you have the GX as well. The TX feel more like a crossover style SUV, while the GX feels like a more proper off-roader. And as I said, when it comes to the styling, I would 100% go for the GX over this, and I would also save a bunch of money doing that. This one I can sort of understand. The reason why I would get this is if I had a chauffeur that would drive me around and I would just lounge in the back seat. I would definitely get this setup then with the two captain's chairs, where I can just lean all the way back and just chill out back there. Let's turn this big boat around and let's see what it can do going downhill. Obviously feels a lot quicker going downhill. And again, this sounds fantastic. It has some body rolls in the corners, which is to be expected. The brakes have a little bit of on the spongier side, but that's also, I guess, more of the luxurious feel for braking. It's not really performance brakes on this. Now, even though this is a proper off-roader, you do have the central locking diff. You definitely have the ground clearance for it, but where I think this car feels most at home is going to be sitting low in the lowest ride height and just going on long road trips. The good news is that once you reach your destination, you can definitely take it off-road, just raise it up, and it will definitely get you to where you need to go.